Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and I think it's happening. I have since late February, I have done an analysis and managed to come out with this estimate when the total collapse of the front line will start, and which means that the Ukrainians have lost so much manpower to the point where they lost effective defensive capability. I think we are starting to see this happening. This past day has some insane frontline changes. So this is the frontline changes report for the past 24 hours for the 11th of August for the day of 1265. And I'll go through this. It's actually over here in the north of Pokrovsk front. This is Pokrovsk, Minorhat, and the Russians have broke through. The entire front line along this line here has total collapse. Like total collapse. The Russian forces have advanced a matter of 9 to 10 kilometers. And this is the total. This is something that I did mention in the previous report that it looks like the line has collapsed. The Russian, there's no more defenses in the rear position. The Russians could break through, and it looks like this total collapse is finally happening, or at least looks like it's going to happen very soon. But before we jump there, we're going to go through by sequence so that we don't get lost. And remember to press the like button and subscribe. We are only a little bit more, a few hundred more to 100,000 subs, and we will be able to reach a new milestone. And together, Defense Politics Asia is not just me; it's actually us. Without you, the DPA, is a nothing. So we're going to jump straight to the first frontline change. Is over at the Sumy front. Over the Sumy front, the Russian forces was geolocated on this forest. So one small little tiny change with the Russian forces, getting a bit more tactical positions around Yunakivka. The Battle of Yunakivka is still ongoing. So this Yunakivka. So this is basically in the Sumy front. So very tiny change. The advance is merely 100, 200 meters at most. So that's the frontline change over at Yunakivka. The next frontline change is over in Zeleny High. So over in the Borova front. So Kupiansk is over here. This is Kupiansk, and this is Borova. And at Zeleny High, there is this frontline change. Again, this is also geolocation of Russian forces, basically at this western end of the town. I have mapped it in a very straightforward triangle way. So because we do not know exactly where the attack come from, so tentatively we just mark it as such. There is a possibility that they have captured Zeleny High, or maybe they just entered from a different direction. I'm not so sure. So basically there's the Zeleny High situation. The frontline move is around 1 kilometer around there. So after Zeleny High, the next frontline change is over in the Lyman front, or Krasny Lyman. This is Lyman. And over in the Kolozyazy region, we have frontline changes. So these are all geolocation. That we have two over here. So Russian forces geolocated at these two positions. And which means the Russian forces have started to do some major offensive around this sector, because previously the Russians have advanced here. So now we have more advance over on the east of Kolozyazy, capturing the eastern outskirts, leading all the way to Bilohorevka. The other one is over in the northwest of Kolozyazy, with the Russian forces flanking on the western side, trying to flank west. While the Russian forces putting pressure over at Kolozyazy. So these are the frontline changes over at Kolozyazy as the Russians starting to push over the Lyman front. The advance in this sector here at minimum is at least 600 meters. Maximum is around 1.3 kilometers. On the other side, the nearest point is probably around 500, 600 meters. At furthest point is around 1.4. So this is the situation here. So the Russian forces making this push over Kolozyazy in the direction of Stavky. The next frontline change is over at Novo Makov at the Bakhmut front. This is Bakhmut front. We have two frontline changes over here, over at Novo Makov and Mainske. Over at the Novo Makov or Makov region, the Ukrainian mapping Deep State UA has updated the map to show that the Russian forces have advanced around Horivka. So Russian forces secured the ground all along the canal. Basically, in this sense, when you map it like this, it means the canal is actually under Russian control. And Russia also advanced down the tree line out of the forest in the direction of Novo Makov. And also this advance is pretty significant tactically in this area here, which means the Ukrainian forces actually lost their defense line. The advance on average is probably around 1 kilometer. So that's the advance from Horivka towards the two Makovs, the new and old one. After this area here further in the south, the Russians is also launching an offensive off Chasivya. The Russian forces, so the Chasivya is here. So the Russian forces have pushed westward out of the messy hills and captured all of the fortifications south of Mainsk. And so Russian forces advance here, and then they are now pushing towards Mainsk over here in the north of this frontline change. The advance here is around 2 kilometers on average, which means there is hardly any defenses. The previous frontline change in the region is on the 7th, so this is on the 11th. So it may not have happened over 24 hours, but the Russians did move around 2 kilometers, even 2.5 if we move towards Mainsk. So this is pretty important as well, with the Russian forces starting to flank north of Konstantinivka by the look of it. So they have advanced in this sector here as they are trying to push in this direction. So this looks like the envelopment of Konstantinivka. The operation to envelop Konstantinivka is starting to begin. So Konstantinivka is here. So I think the operation to envelop it is starting to begin, because we have other frontline changes that seems to also point to this thing. So we go to the Torx front. At the Torx front, there is a strengthening of the front line by Deep State UA. They have mapped it like this at Dilievka. Very small change, not very important. The Deep State UA also updated some mapping around the Dilievka and Alexandro-Shutine region, but because their mapping is still more conservative than our mapping, so there's no frontline change on our mapping. Over in Katerinivka, so in this impossible salient or nearly impossible salient here, the Russian mapping by Ryba, the pro-Russian source Ryba, have updated the map, and they show that the entire region here, all the way reaching to Katerinivka, is all under Russian control. So this is a Russian claim, but this is not impossible. This is a very logical frontline change. As I mentioned, the front line here is already compromised. The entire region, this entire front line here has become a difficult, very, very difficult salient. So such a movement in this sector is not impossible. And however, at Katerinivka itself, so basically this advance here is firstly around 2 kilometers northward, north-south, and from the front line to the change is around 3 kilometers. So this is a very, very big frontline change. This piece here is 13.4 square kilometers. Previously, we have two geolocations. We marked it as an advance in this sector here. Ukrainians have been geolocated over this area here. According to the Russian sources or the Russian mapping, in their mapping, the Russians did not come from from the north of Torx. The Russians actually come from the south of Katerinivka, leading to this geolocation. And then the Ukrainians now geolocated in this area here is actually a Ukrainian counterattack. So for us, we just map it like this. So it's a bit you say, I say situation. So we do not know exactly what is the reality right now. So our interpretation is of course coming from the nearest point. From the Russians, they say that this entire area is already taken by the Russian forces. So pick your poison. But definitely, things are looking really ugly right here. As I mentioned, this front line here is unlikely to last more than a month. I believe it will fall in 2 weeks. So we are in the first week of these 2 weeks. So let's see, how long this can last. Because the position here is just impossible right now. So on the west of Konstantinivka, as I mentioned, there is this developing northern flanking operation, big operation. This is a big campaign to flank north of Konstantinivka. So there's another one is coming from the west. So this one, we have frontline changes at the west of Stepanivka. Russian forces is geolocated at this point here. So Stepanivka is here. This Stepanivka. So Russian forces is geolocated here. They are pushing north. So we have mapped it in a very simple triangle to signify this. And this push is will develop into envelopment of the western side of Konstantinivka. As I mentioned, the operation is probably going to end up with the cutting, limiting the advance over here. So there is all these walls that the Russians will start to build up around Konstantinivka to force the Ukrainians out. So just want to explain my analysis, which in case you did not watch the analysis videos, so the Russians is going to push in this direction. So it looks like it's playing out as how I expected it to come. And no, so and then we go to the next, the big frontline change. The Ukrainian mapping have dropped massive report. So previously I have mentioned that the Ukrainians have mapped the Russians have went as far as I think Kusherivya, I think as far as that. This one is no, this one I think the furthest point was Kusherivya. So I did mention that the gray zone actually went very far. The previous frontline change was here, was this one, to this point. But then the gray zone actually reached all the way to Kusherivya, and it looks like the front line here has entirely collapsed. The Ukrainian mapping after just one day have lengthened the front line from the furthest point all the way to the furthest point. This is the 9 kilometers advance, 9, and this is a straight line. And if you go from a deeper point, let's say from this position to the furthest point, this is actually 11 kilometers. So the Russians basically have broke through, like massively broke through. Like it's a total collapse. There's nothing behind. The Russians just break all the way in, like the Ukrainians in the initial stage of the Kursk offensive, where the Ukrainians basically punch into the Kursk region and then start to go very, very far. And this is something that I have warned that is likely going to happen soon. And this is the first time I think we have seen such a big Russian advance in a long time. So the Russian forces, so from the Novo Makov region, have advanced all the way up, according to Ukrainian mapping, in two different directions. I think because they do not want to say that Kusherivya is taken. And you see it already broke through my mapping, where the Ukrainian front line, they went so far, my Ukrainian front line don't even catch up. The Russian forces have pushed all the way to Versailles. They probably is attacking Hursk. And on the other flank, so definitely they are also flanking north of Kusherivya, and based on the mapping, it is getting encircled. The Russian forces is very near to Rubizny, as well as attacking into Kolotys. And this advance is significant, very, very significant. And as I mentioned, when this kind of thing happens, the front line extend, the Ukrainians with manpower problems going to have even more manpower problem because they would not be able to plug the gap. And by this point, if the Russians are ready, they will be able to continue to push on, and the front line will total collapse, and we will probably see some massive insane frontline change. And I also said before, what we are trying to look for is, before this, we have a 10 square kilometers. Then after that, things become 20 square kilometers. So right now, we are transiting from the 20 square kilometers, probably going into the 30 or even 50 square kilometers range on a per day basis. So, and when the front line becomes 50 to 100 square kilometers change a day in terms of square kilometers, then we can confirm that the Ukrainians is in total free fall. So right now, this is like the beginning of this free fall, very, very serious situation. And this is looking like a deer. No, this is the deer's head. and then you have some beard, and then the eyes is here, and then you have a very, very long horn. As I said, this is a very, very serious report. It's a very, very serious situation, and one should never, like talk about horns on the horn. But because this is a very, very serious situation because of the horn that has developed on the deer's head, no, you need to know. You really need to know. And it's and I mentioned a long time ago, so I know this is a Frontline Changes report, but I think I need to say a bit more because Frontline Changes report tend to have more people watching. I want to say, I have mentioned many times ago in my analysis, even in the super panels, talking with history legend, really OEM, Dan Castle, I've mentioned that the Russians is unlikely to go into Sloviansk and Kramatorsk because they want to avoid fighting in the big cities, and the only sensible thing is to go up all of this open ground all the way to Izium, and I think this is currently what is happening. Izium is over here. It used to be captured by the Russian forces, and we are now seeing this massive push into the open ground. And if the Russians are successful, and you can see this is very fast, this push in 2 days time, in 2 days, we are talking about 15 kilometers advance. From this current front line right now, all the way to the northern border is only 40 kilometers. If the Russians can continue to push 10, 11 kilometers, we are talking about Russians reaching this point all the way on the western direction of Sloviansk at the border in just 4 days. Within a week, the Russians could potentially reach this point in 4 days. So in a matter of maybe by the end of this month, because now we are only like just entering into the middle of the month. In 2 weeks' time, we might see the front line, becoming something very, very ridiculous. So, and I think this push is going to come. Is going to establish some very, very difficult negotiations for Donald Trump as when Donald Trump meet Putin in Alaska. And Putin's job is not to secure a peace deal. Putin's job is to drag the war because the Russians are going to secure whatever they want, and the Ukrainians are already on the free fall, the beginning of the free fall. I think the Russians will just go for whatever they want. I think now is the beginning. But anyway, going back to the Frontline Changes report, this new horn here is 24.7 square kilometers. It's a very, very big frontline change. And this is totally ridiculous. The next frontline change after this, we have one more, is over at Zatishok. South of this position, the Russians also have advanced. So this is below, and this is the face, the head of the horn, of the deer. The Russian forces have captured Zatishok. According to Ukrainian mapping, the Russian forces also advanced greatly in the north of Suketsky and northwest of Fedorivka. Russian forces overrun Zatishok without a fight. The Ukrainian forces have zero will to fight by the look of it. From the front line at Zuketsky all the way up north is already almost 2 kilometers. It's 1.7 kilometers just northward. From the previous front line that we have near Fedorivka all the way to the nearest point is already 2 kilometers, nearest front line point. So if we move all the way to where the railway line is, that is 5 kilometers. The Ukrainians did not defend at all. This area here is entirely overrun by the Russian forces. The Ukrainians have lost the will to fight, or they have run out of men, or both. So this is a total collapse right now, and Bilitsky is now inside. The Russians, surprisingly, is going to push into Bilitsky within the next day, I believe so. I have mentioned this line here, this railway line for us is the defense line that the Ukrainians should hold. And I think that they're going to fail. The Russians are not going to just go for Bilitsky. They're going to go westward directly through the fortifications and cut the highway, which is the main objective of this western flanking operation or northern flanking operations around Vinogorod and Pokrovsk. And again, for those that don't watch my analysis reports or my situation reports, I just want to say the aim is to cut off the road, establish a front line like this, forcing the Ukrainians to redraw northwestward or westward out of the Donetsk region. So this is a very, very significant frontline change. report. That's why I have to talk a bit more. So we're going to do some calculation in terms of frontline changes report. I will do separate reports regarding all the various front lines as things is going crazy right now. And of course, I think I need to drop the SIP rep soon. Probably today I'll do a SIP rep, but I will also do a separate analysis report. I'll see how to manage this. And for those that haven't subscribed to the DPA War channel, so not just this channel, subscribe to DPA War. Search on the YouTube DPA War. So on Rumble, no problem. We only have one channel for that. But on the YouTube, search DPA War. The other analysis may be dropping there. So the Ukrainians have captured 0.67 square kilometers, which is the geolocation of the counterattack at Katerinivka, which is like no pointless. Yesterday, the Russian forces captured 18.1 square kilometers. So the previous 2 days was around 10 square kilometers range. So now we are definitely catching up with the past 24 hours moving at 0.06 plus 1.25 plus 2.59 plus 7.71 plus 16.85 plus 34.14. The total area captured is 62.6 square kilometers. This is insane numbers. 62.6 square kilometers, and this is of course not including the Koma front, not including Voreshna, and some of the areas that maybe Kupiansk front where frontline changes may be happening and yet is not reported yet. Sivers front, for example, So and let's say 62.6. Like I mentioned, the previous 2 days before yesterday was around 10 square kilometers. Let's say we minus 20 square kilometers away from this. It's still 42.6 square kilometers. So we are talking about we are reaching the 50 square kilometers mark where I say that it's a total collapse. And if this happens on a daily basis, we have 50 square kilometers, then we are now looking at the end games, the final phase of the war, where what you will see is the Russians starting to conquer grounds at will, and the Russians will start to dictate where the front line or where the final border of Ukraine would be. And once things go into the 100 square kilometers range, we will start to probably see new operations. For example, Odessa front, Mykolaiv, Kherson. We will see Russians crossing the Dnieper River to take back the rest of Kherson. We'll probably see a major offensive moving towards Zaporizhia. So a lot of crazy things is going to happen once we reach 100 square kilometers range. So now we are now transiting from 20. We are looking at probably 50 square kilometers. Instead of 30, because of this breakthrough, we are probably going to see a skip. We are going to skip through the 30 square kilometers mark, but going straight into 50. As I said, things is going to move in an exponential way. It's not linear. Collapse are always exponential. So anyway, thank you for watching. Press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next update. The next update should be a situation report, at least on this channel. Bye guys.